You know that feeling, right? You walk away from a conversation just feeling completely misunderstood, maybe even a little frustrated, even though you went in with the best of intentions. It happens all the time. We accidentally communicate in ways that build these invisible walls between us. Well, in this explainer, we're going to tear down those walls by looking at a really powerful alternative, nonviolent communication. It's all about building windows instead. So let's get into what those walls actually sound and feel like.
And this verse from Ruth Biebermeyer, man, it just nails that feeling, doesn't it? Sometimes words can land like a judgment, like a judge's sentence, and the other person just shuts down completely. But what if our words could be windows instead? What if they could be a way to actually connect, to really see and hear each other for who we are?
All right, so let's start by looking at these walls. These are the habits, the ways of speaking that we fall into without even thinking about it, but they end up blocking our own natural compassion from flowing through.
Okay, this slide really breaks it down for us. Marshall Rosenberg, the guy who developed nonviolent communication, he calls these walls life-alienating communication. And this includes stuff we do all the time, right? Like moralistic judgments, slapping a label on someone, calling them bad or selfish, or making comparisons, which is pretty much a guaranteed way to make yourself and everyone else miserable. And then there's denying responsibility. You know, using phrases like, I had to do it, or it's just company policy.
And here's the really important part. This way of communicating isn't just about being impolite, it's a learned behavior, a habit that makes us focus on what's wrong with other people. It's like we're outsourcing our own moral compass to some outside authority, and in the process, we totally disconnect from what's actually alive in us and in them, our core, fundamental human needs.
Okay, so if that's the problem, what do we do about it? How do we actually start building those windows instead of walls? Well, let's get into the heart of NVC, which is this beautifully simple 4-step framework.
Here they are: observations, feelings, needs, and requests. It's actually a pretty straightforward process. First, you just state what you're observing, factually, like a security camera would. No judgment. Second, you share the feeling that this observation triggers in you. Third, and this is key, you identify the universal human need that's behind that feeling. And finally, number 4, you make a clear, concrete, actionable request. It's like a recipe for genuine connection.
Now that first step, separating what we observe from how we evaluate it, that is probably the hardest and most important piece of this whole thing. Just look at these examples. If you say, Hank is a poor soccer player, that's a judgment, right? It just invites the other person to argue. But if you say, Hank has not scored a goal in 20 games, well, that's just a fact. It's undeniable. And it totally removes the criticism and opens the door for a real conversation instead of just making people defensive.
So all 4 of those steps are vital, but let's just jump ahead to that last one for a second, making requests. Because this is another spot where so many of our conversations just completely fall apart. I mean, think about it. If we aren't even clear about what we want, how can we possibly expect anyone else to give it to us? Vague language doesn't just confuse other people. It's usually a sign that we haven't gotten clear with ourselves yet.
And this just illustrates the point perfectly. A vague request like, I want you to let me be me, is, well, it's impossible to act on. But when the person digs a little deeper, they realize what they're actually asking for is for the other person to smile and say that anything I do is okay. Now that might be a really tough request to grant, but hey, at least now it's clear. Same thing with show respect. What does that actually look like in the real world? It looks like knocking before you come in. See? Making clear positive requests forces us to figure out what we truly want.
Okay, so we've got the framework. It sounds good in theory, but does this stuff actually work under pressure? Like real pressure? Well, let's look at an absolutely incredible real-world example of NVC in action when the stakes could not have been higher. So get this, Marshall Rosenberg is at a refugee camp, and this man comes up to him just screaming in his face, "Murderer, assassin." Now, most of us, our first instinct would be to either defend ourselves or attack right back. But watch what Rosenberg does. He doesn't hear the judgment. He listens for the feeling and the need behind the words. He takes a guess. Are you angry because you would like my government to use its resources differently? And the man just explodes. But listen to what he's really saying. He's revealing the deep source of his pain. He isn't just angry for no reason. He has these profound, unmet needs for basic things, for sanitation, for housing, for political freedom. The attack was just the tragic, outward expression of all that inner pain. And Rosenberg just stays with him. He reflects back the feelings and the needs that he's hearing. Notice he's not agreeing, he's not disagreeing, he's just offering empathy.
He's showing this man that he is being heard, not at the surface level of the insults, but at the deep level of his needs.
And this went on for 20 minutes. And by the end of it, the man's anger was completely gone. A real human connection was made where there was only rage before. The man finally felt heard because Rosenberg made a choice to receive his words not as an attack, but as a gift that was revealing his most profound unmet needs.
But here's where it gets really powerful. This ability to listen for needs isn't just for diffusing conflict with other people. Maybe its most important application is in the conversations we have inside our own heads every single day.
Seriously, just take a second and think about it. The last time you really messed something up, what was the very first thing you said to yourself? What did that voice in your head sound like?
Does any of this sound familiar? That was so dumb. What is wrong with you? Look, all of this is just violence turned inward. It comes from this crazy idea that we somehow deserve to suffer for our mistakes. But all that self-hatred, it doesn't help us learn. It just keeps us stuck in a loop of shame and stops us from actually growing.
So here's a really powerful little exercise you can do to shift that. First, just make a list of everything you tell yourself you have to do. You know, all those chores and obligations you dread. Then go back through the list and reframe every single one. Instead of "I have to write this report," try saying "I choose to write this report." And finally, connect that choice to one of your needs. I choose to write this report because I want the financial security it brings my family. That simple shift can turn total drudgery into a sense of purpose.
And that's the bottom line. When we connect our actions, even the really difficult ones, to the needs they serve, we take our power back. We're no longer just victims of our to-do list. We become conscious creators of our own lives, choosing to act in service of what we truly value.
Okay, so we've looked at the problem of walls, we've walked through the four-part solution, and we've seen how to apply it to others and, maybe most importantly, to ourselves. So, what now? How do we actually take this out of theory and put it into our real lives?
Well, this is the challenge, and it's also the invitation. In your very next conversation, doesn't matter if it's with a coworker, a family member, or even just with your own inner critic, try to listen differently. Instead of just hearing the criticism, the blame, or the demand, ask yourself one simple question. What unmet need is this person, or am I, trying to express right now? Just try it and see what happens.